Hey, pedal people, it's Pedal Guy here. How you doing? It's time for questions and answers, so let's get started right now. Well, hey, it's Scott, the Pedal Guy here. How you doing? Welcome to episode 12 of Questions and Answers. Now, if this is your first visit to our channel, make sure you take a second and click on that subscribe button down there and ring that bell so you can stay up to date with all of our videos. And if you're watching this on Facebook or Instagram, be sure to like and follow us so you can stay up to date with all of our activities, because we do post daily and we'd love to hear from you. Well, this is episode 12 of our continuing series of questions and answers where I take your pedal comments, your pedal feedback, and try to answer them to the best of my ability. So let's just get right to it. Our first question comes to us from Joel, and it's in regard to the Trio Plus. And Joel writes, can we get the drums and bass separate using a Y cable to control them separately in the mixer? Joel, thank you very much for the question. Unfortunately, the answer is no. You simply have the drum volume knob and the bass volume knob on the pedal itself, and it is a mono output that goes out of the Trio Plus there. So unfortunately, you don't have discrete control of that when you plug it into your mixing console. So hope that helps. Our next question comes to us from Michael, and it's in regard to the NUX Mighty 8 BT. And Michael writes, is there any way of getting a straight metal tone from this amp? Maybe from using the app or something. In the market for a small amp with a killer tone, but don't want to have to purchase a pedal also. Something along the line of Slayer/Metallica. Michael, thank you very much for your question. The very simple answer is absolutely you can get that kind of a tone out of it. Certainly, if you're a Metallica fan, you won't have any trouble finding it. You just gotta fiddle around with the app, turn off the effects you don't want, make some adjustments to the EQ, and the metal presets are already pretty solid as they are, because one position gives you a classic retro metal tone, and the other one gives you more of a modern thrash metal tone. So absolutely, yeah. So I hope that helps you out. Our next question comes to us from Abdel, and it's in regard to the Hot Tone Vulcan 5.0 mini amp. And Abdel writes, how good is the clean tone of this amp? Well, Abdel, thank you very much for your question. Frankly, it's not very good, because the 5150, which is what the Vulcan 5.0 is, it wasn't really known for being that kind of an amp. Certainly you can get a clean tone out of it, but if you're looking for a hot tone amp that has a good clean sound, the British Invasion would be the one that I would probably recommend more than anything, which is a Vox AC emulation. The Vulcan 5.0 has a great sound, don't get me wrong, and if you can find one, you should get one, because they are out of production now, so they're going to be rather scarce. But I do think that it has a great tone to it. Certainly you can hear it in the Ampero and in the binary pedals, because the amp is built into those particular products as well. But still, if you can't put your hands on one of those Vulcan 5.0s, I definitely recommend doing it. So thanks a lot for your question. Our next question comes to us from Jerry Yancey by way of our Instagram channel. I'm getting tired of hearing about the Digitech TRIO. Well, Jerry, thank you very much for the feedback. People ask about the Trio Plus. We're one of the destinations where people are asking about it, so I'm compelled to answer the questions. I do agree we've been laying it on rather thick lately, but if you see the stats on our YouTube channel, and if you see the stats on our Instagram channel, whenever I post something about the Strum or I post something about the Trio Plus, people just go ape, and I get lots of clicks, and I get lots of likes, and I get lots of views. So I'm going where the trend is. That's not to say that we will just concentrate on it forever, but duly noted, and I'll try to balance it out a little more for you in the future. But thanks for the feedback. Our next question comes to us from Tanya, and it's in regard to the Trio Plus. Tanya writes, would you help with Trio Plus beat setup for Sade, Your Love is King? Thank you. Tanya, thank you very much for your question. As soon as you asked that last week, I felt compelled to put that album on, actually, to listen to it, because I forgot what a great singer Sade is, and it's always a good reminder of some of the fantastic sounds of the 80s and 90s. Anyway, okay, so to try to help you out here, the song is actually a pretty easy song to recreate, I would think, on the Trio Plus, mainly because you probably want to work with either the country, the folk, or the jazz settings as far as the genre goes, because the bass should lock into that pretty nicely. As far as the beat goes, the beat is a triplet based on a 4/4 time. So quite literally anything in the style wheel of any of those should get you pretty close. If you want something in a 3/4 time, you use styles 10, 11, or 12 on this side of the pedal, and that will give you a 3/4 time in that style, depending on the genre that you've selected. So I'll take a closer look at it over the course of the week, and maybe in next week's Q&A I can give you a little bit of an update there on how I got there. But it's actually a pretty straightforward song, and the progression is very easy. So once you teach it the bass part, because it's not a very complicated one, it's a pretty simple, straightforward bass. But once you do that, the bass part, or the chords, I should say, the Trio Plus should be able to pick up on that and build a bass and drum part around that that sounds relatively close to the original song. Hope that helps. Our next comment comes to us from Django Fett. I'm going to call this officially our Facepalm of the week. Django writes, and this is about the Horseman, the Nuix Horseman, by the way. Django Fett writes, for an audio demo, why does everything sound like muddy blank? Not going to say the word. I don't want to get demonetized for this fool. Your voice too? You have a recording issue. Django, noted. Thank you for your opinion. Everybody's got one. That's what gives the internet such allure. But as far as the way it sounds, I kind of disagree with you on that point. I think it's a pretty fair representation of what the pedal sounds like. I listened back to it actually after I read this feedback, and well, you know, you might want to put on a pair of headphones because it sounded pretty clear to me. But then again, you know, what do I know? Everybody's got a different pair of ears when they hear something. As for the microphone, I was using an older mic at the time, and I've actually changed to something that's a bit nicer now. So I do get a pretty clear sound out of that. But still, I'll just leave it at that. But thank you for trolling me, and have a nice day. And our last feedback comes to us from Jay, and it's in regard to my video from last week on building a hair metal rig with the Headrush pedal board. And Jay writes, I like that you're using a Headrush, but for my taste, the sound is way too thin sounding, lacking all bass and no body or fullness to it. Sorry. Well, Jay, thank you for your feedback, and you actually just made my point about hair metal tones, okay? Now, look, I can't tell your age from your photo. I have no idea how old you are. I grew up in the 80s. I listened to a lot of 80s hair metal. I still do listen to a lot of 80s hair metal. And if I still had the hair to support it, I'd probably still have really long, fluffy hair. But thankfully I don't. But in any case, there were obviously exceptions to the rule, but most hair metal had a very thin sound to the guitar because it had to fit into the pocket of the mix. And I think there was much more concentration at that point on drums being a lot bigger than they were. Everything just got a lot bigger over time and bombastic, and there was a lot more reverb, and there was a lot more chorus, and there was a lot more delay than there had ever been before to that point, because you had your pop metal, you had your hair metal, you had the beginnings of what would be the Metallica sound, or not the beginnings, but I mean, you know, Metallica's sound evolved over that period of time greatly from Kill 'Em All the way up to the end of the 80s. But as I said, there were some exceptions to the rule, and as far as hair metal goes, it was always really thin by comparison. Solid state amps, you name it. All that stuff came into play, and then all of a sudden, people discovered tubes again when grunge came into fashion. And that was a whole other sound, and that's where that fullness and mid-range came in to play, and it was a much different ballgame. So I get your feedback, and thank you for it, and thank you for making my point. Okay, that brings us to the end of this session of questions and answers. Thanks for sticking it out with us. In closing, just a couple of quick things. One, do a solid favor and stay that 6 feet apart if you're in public. Social distancing is so very, very important right now, and you're not only helping out yourself, but you're helping your fellow person. I'll thank you, my family will thank you, your friends and family will thank you. The other thing too is wear your mask, wear your face covering. Please don't give people what you got, okay? Even if it's just a cold, nobody wants to deal with that right now. I can't tell you how many people at the post office I've had to remind to wear their masks when they're standing in line with me. If you have any questions on the products that we've discussed in this video, please visit us at thepedalguy.com. Also be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks and have a great day.